family, 6 p.m. at the Gold Beach High School Library. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
What time?
6:01.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I believe Mr. McNair is really excited about reading the mission statement tonight.
All right.
So I'll task him with that.
I have it. The mission of Central Curry School District 1, in partnership with families and community, is to ensure each and every student is prepared to succeed and contribute in the global society by engaging in a challenging, personalized program of educational excellence.
Thank you. As a reminder, Carl asked if everybody could use their classroom voice so that we're projecting to the camera back there. Yeah.
Okay.
No, you did good. You reminded me. Presentations. Item 2.1, introduction of new instructional staff.
Mr. Dane? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm spacing out there. I'd like to introduce Mary Caravia, and she is our 5th grade teacher this year and wasn't able to make it to our last board meeting, so she came tonight. And we're very, very happy to have Mary. She's actually went to 3 universities, 1 for a BA, and then she has 2 masters. So rarely do you find such a young person with 2 masters. So I'd like to welcome her officially to Central Curry School District.
What are her master's degrees in?
My first master's is in education and teaching English as a second or other language, and then my second master's is in teaching. So,
Very
yeah.
good.
And my bachelor's is linguistics related. So, yeah.
She's amazing.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say hi to everyone. I know I have a few of your kiddos that I haven't met you, but it's been a pleasure. The kids are really kind to me, and as far as all the technology hookups they go, so that's really nice to have a lot of kindness in this time. And I've been having a really wonderful time. I worked till 5 o'clock, so I literally went home, got my comfies, and then came here. So I had a really long day, but I appreciate you guys having me just for a little bit. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming back. No judgment at all. Trust me. Matter of fact, I kind of like the idea of coming to a school board meeting.
Yeah, I worked pretty late, so.
Okay. Anybody else? Tom? Tim? Josh? All right. All right, 2.2, donation from the Rotary Club of Gold Beach.
I'd like Mr. King to come forward if you may. So I'm wearing 2 hats tonight, one as superintendent, but also this year I'm proudly serving as president of the Gold Beach Rotary Club. And Carl has been our grants guru for many years, and with his guidance helped me write 2 grants that are both are a district grant matched by our local club. And our club has decided this year and has been approved by our district for a donation of $2,000 to the school district for help in technology, and it was primarily around providing hotspots, internet connectivity, and devices as necessary. So just as a small token of thanks, we appreciate the Rotary Club's contributions to our district and our children.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll take a photo off a little bit later.
Yeah, very good.
All right, thank you. Agenda changes?
No, sir.
I have nothing. Very good. Consent agenda. Minutes from the September 23rd and October 7 meetings and declaration of surplus items.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Nancy seconds. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda approved. All right, number 5, citizen input for non-agenda items. State your name and address for the record and limit it to 3 minutes. And we've been asking prior to the meeting to complete a comment request card, which I have one here. Ms. Miller, if you'd like to step to the podium, you're up.
So I'm going to reserve most of my statement for after I've had a chance to hear what you have to say
Okay.
in today's meeting. But I do want to push forward how important I think it is to address the budget issue of expanding our bandwidth within the school district. This includes for the daycare programs as well as supporting Hive's needs as they run out of funding.
Okay. Yeah, there's another citizen input item at the end once we get all through the agenda items.
Can I respond to one piece of that?
Sure.
And it's not the piece that relates to the budget for the school, but it does relate to daycare hotspots, and that is that I did, Ms. Miller brought this up at a tech committee meeting, and I did follow up and ask another agency about whether or not there were any funding options for that. And the response was they believe that the United Way, which is for our region, which is based out of Coos Bay, is still awarding grants at this point in time for projects like that. So if you have communication with any of the daycares in question, I would encourage them to reach out to United Way in Coos Bay.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
All right, 5.1, it looks like, or we taking public comments specific to the?
Yes.
Okay.
Daycares and stuff around.
So this is public comment specific to the student investment account funds. If there's any takers on that one. I'll take that as a no. And move on to district reports. Financial reports, Crystal.
Okay, you have your reports in front of you. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at them. Your yellow is your accounts payable list, and I was just going to bring a couple things to your attention. Let's see. On page 4, you can see almost the $40,000 to Dell. Out of multiple funding sources, as you can tell. That was for the laptops that we purchased for our staff. And then you're also going to start seeing the beginning of some of the costs for some of the units for the students. If you look on page 6 and you see the CDI down towards the bottom, you can see that it's right there, 20 Surface Goes, and there's going to be a lot more coming because we purchased over 100. Well, 100 actually, Surface Goes. So that's sort of the unusual thing on that list. Your revenue report is showing the one payment for the state school fund, and as you can see, current taxes still nothing, because we tend to not get anything till usually November. So when that first bill is due, if you guys pay property taxes, you know that they can be split into 3 different payments, or if you pay all up front, you'll get a 3% discount. So we tend to get the majority, or our largest sum, actually in November. Your expenditure report, you're going to start seeing this, obviously, because this is for the month of September, you're going to start seeing this obviously greatly increase. This September represents the first month of what we would consider to be a normal, if you will, payroll, a large payroll, which includes all of our instructional staff. So for example, if you look at the first line under elementary instruction, which is kindergarten through 5th grade, you can see that the range to date, which is that monthly amount, is almost as high as the year to date, and that's why. Because you're now seeing the payroll showing up on your expenditure reports for most of the areas. And then cash is doing exactly what you would expect it to do at this point, and it's going down. Up until we hit, once again, November. And are there any questions on those? Okay, I want to talk to you real quick about the student body account at Riley Creek. When we brought Shelley over to the district office, she continued to be doing the accounts payable for the student body accounts at Riley Creek. And so, I don't know how much you guys know about that account, but basically, we have an account at each school and a lot of the student type activities. So if you think of things, like when they're going out and doing fundraising for basketball, that's in that fund. On your reports, like on your expenditure report, you just see it as one fund. So the high school is Fund 290, Riley Creek is Fund 291. You see very limited info. But the reality is we have a whole two separate financial systems that have an immense amount of detail. So where we see Fund 291 in Riley Creek, we have a separate system that might show 60 sub-accounts in Fund 291. And Shelley has continued to pay all of those bills, do the accounts payable for that as well. So this is sort of step 2 in our reconfiguration process, and that's the intent to move those funds back into the main account, allowing us to cut one check instead of 2 checks out of 2 different accounts, out of 2 different financial systems. It's going to allow us to do that because we intend, obviously, to keep all of that there. We've done a lot of the back-end work, if you will, on creating the detail level that we need in that other financial system, and this is sort of going to be our first rollout, hopefully within this next month of doing that.
So just for clarification, when it moves into the other fund, you'll still be tracking the,
Yeah, that's why it took a long time, because there's a lot, the financial system that we use in the main one, it took a lot of work to get all of that in there so that we could get appropriate reports, so that the basketball coach, for example, could come up and see everything that's gone in and out of the basketball fund, even though it's all Fund 291. So that will probably entail then me closing that bank account. So I know I need a motion to open a bank account. I'm actually not sure if I need a motion to close a bank account, but if you'd like to do that, that would be actually great.
so what, on our next, once that happens, on our next financial report, where will it show? Will it show up under general? Oh,
No, it'll look exactly like it does.
okay. But
It'll
it's
still
just
show up
that
as-
the account itself won't be there.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
it's allowing us to just sort of consolidate, so we're not running 2 different systems.
Got it.
Yeah. It'll still show up under Fund 291, it'll still all be separate, we'll be able to account for it all separately, and we will have all those sub-accounts all still separate as well.
I move we approve the closing of the Oak student body bank account. How's that sound?
It sounds great.
All right,
Yes.
second that motion.
further discussion? All is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, account closed. Any other questions for Crystal? Can we move on? Principal reports, Mr. Denning, in the blue.
All right, yes, blue tonight. I'll just go to this real quick. I'm sure you guys have already read most of it. Dan Springer worked Easter off, getting all the devices retooled and recalibrated, and we actually have extras now. So that was really a big headache since the end of August all the way through September. There were so many people that needed devices, and some kids were even doing things on mom and dad's cell phone and stuff. So now we've got kind of a surplus now, and we're starting to, what's happening now is we're getting devices that aren't working or have crashed, and we're able to swap them out too. So it's kind of an ongoing thing. I've got a pile in my office of stuff for Dan to do when he shows up again. But thanks, Dan, for all this hard work. I know he went, skipped a lot of meals and stuff, getting it all ready for us too. Ongoing professional development. Some of my teachers are really hitting the nail on the head with their online instruction, and some of them, it's such a new thing. It's a little bit of a struggle. I mean, they're all doing great, working as hard as they can, but I've been looking for professional development, and there's not a lot out there yet because it's so new to the country and possibly to the world. So what we're going to have to do is kind of work with the staff that are, for example, Darby is pretty much one of our shining stars online. And so we're probably going to have to figure out a way to use our PD from within with our own staff, which is actually, research says that's probably the best kind of PD to have. You're not paying $1,000 for some specialist to come in, and when you can, Darby will do it for free, right? So thanks, Bill. All right. Appreciate that. It was kind of a bad audience here. So. Our immediate goals, ensure that every student gets a device, and these were my goals from September, so check on that one. Kept staff and students safe, checked off on that, and get students back into the building. And actually, we have been doing that with our special education kids. And we were allowed to bring in kids in small groups of one or maybe two for the counselor or me to work with them, getting online and kind of guiding them. David Fonken, our new counselor, is really amazing what he's been able to do and help a lot of families out. And he's been able to meet with sometimes 2, 3, 4 kids a day individually and help them get online, help them log in, and really work with them and work with their families too. So we're excited to have Dave, and thank you guys for getting me a full-time counselor. I miss Sydney, but it's really nice to have someone there all day long too. That's great. Goals for October. I don't know if I want to read this. Bring K2 students into the building by October 26th. And you saw it today. We were moving forward as fast as we could. And we kind of hit a big snag today with some logistics with transportation. So we had to revise that. And what we're doing is hoping to get K5 students into the building by November 2nd. We've got a few more days now to contact families. And just for you guys to know, the biggest, the issue was so many parents have set up little co-ops for their kids with other families. Grandma and grandpa have the kids. They're at Hive. They're at a daycare center. So we kind of tentatively built our first busing schedule based on everybody's home. And so it turns out a lot of our kids are not at home. So we designed a bus route system that was not going to work. So we kind of had to start fresh almost to get it going all over again. And we're not going to be able to do that and get the times and everything to parents by Monday. So that's why we kind of delayed for another week. And I feel terrible. The K2 kids were so excited. The teachers had talked to them today about they were going to come in groups of 10 for each class. And we're just going to have to wait for another week. So my apologies for that and for the heat that we're all going to be taking for the information getting out there and then kind of having to back up on it too. Internet connectivity in community areas, we're still working on that. I think a couple hotspots showed up this week, and we're getting that going. Printing for digital education has been an issue. We shared, I think I shared that last month too. When we kind of bought the system and put the kids fully online, we didn't realize the amount of printing that families had to do at home, and a lot of our parents don't have printers at home. So teachers are actually making packets, the dreaded word packets, and then my K2 teachers I know went out on a bus on Friday morning and were delivering the packets, which is really awesome. That's great for that relational piece. The kids absolutely loved it. And the teachers had a great time too, getting to see the kids and stuff. So that was good, but that's something to be, when we think about digital education, it's not fully digital, at least at this point in time, and with Edgenuity too. And then tech support for families, we talked about that. That's still a concern. We're not getting as many calls as we did in the beginning, but there's still a need for some kind of number that our families can call and get some support and some help. Right now we're using our counselor and some of our super user teachers, but there still would be nice to have something in place so Tina doesn't have to try to expand on how to restart a computer and reboot it when we don't know how because of the difficulties the parents are having too. Some of you might have seen the mobile library. Sally Hawkins has been working on getting a mobile library, and so she loads up one of the little buses with books, and we have some, I think, eight different spots around our community, and she goes and parks there for half an hour to 45 minutes, and families can come and check out books or return books, and the first week we did it, we had 15, so we thought, we had a week off. There was a teacher statewide professional in-service day, so we couldn't do it that day because the classified staff didn't work. But we put flyers in all of the lunch bags, thinking we're going to have a great turnout. We had six families last week. So I told Sally she needed to talk to Jeremy and get some some library tips and tricks from him, but that was one of the reasons why we were really hoping to get the kids in here, because then Sally could actually bring a cart to each room, and we could actually have kids check out books there. But we're going to have to probably do another week of the bus this week, and hopefully next week, the week after next, we'll be able to get, the kids can be in person with the library, or somehow we'll work that out at the library too. And on the back, this was going to be our schedule, but that's all gone now. It's still a similar format, but we met this morning. We had an administrative meeting this morning, and we're going to, on November 2nd, we're going to be increasing our hours. I don't know, Tim, if I don't want to steal your thunder if you
Go ahead.
talk about that. We're a little under the state requirement for hours. There's different hours of instruction, online instruction for each K3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. And so we're going to have to be increasing the hours of teacher instruction. And it increases, obviously, as you get older. And the reason we kind of held off a little bit was, first of all, we were trying to get our teachers up to speed on the new system. The second reason was because so many of our parents had to share devices. And so, if you had a first grader and a third grader, they could not have class at the same time because they were sharing a device. But now that we have plenty of devices, we're hoping we can do that. Darby talked about the connectivity issue. I know the tech committee is looking at increasing our bandwidth at school, because occasionally we're having teachers getting kicked off because of the bandwidth issues. The big concern right now is home internet. If they have a couple, some families have 3 kids, or maybe even 4 kids, if they're all online at the same time, what is the home bandwidth? Is that going to be able to cover digital streaming for that too? So that's a concern, but we're going to move forward and try to deal with problems as they arise too for that. But that's kind of the changes, and we'll keep you guys in the loop on everything that's going on. But my heart was set on Monday, but it's going to have to move to November 2nd, and the kids are going to be all sugared up anyway from Halloween, so it's going to be a fun day. But we're planning on hopefully doing K5 if the logistics work out, to bring them all back in groups of 10. Some classes will be AB. If they have less than 20 in the class, because then we can do 10. Some classes are more than 20, we're going to have to do ABC. And we're still working on what the D-Day would look like for some of those classes too.
So I'm a little confused about that. I was going to ask you about that, the ABC versus AB, because on the enrollment update, it looks to me like there's more kids in first grade than there is in kindergarten. So
There's 2 teachers.
2 teachers, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, right now, kindergarten is over 20, third grade, or second grade is over 20, fourth grade is right at 20, but on November 2nd, we're also allowing kids to switch from online into CDL or the other way, and we're predicting that we'll have several that will move from fully online into CDL, so that would bump fourth grade over, and then fifth grade is over too.
So really, there's actually group A, B, and group AA, BB, because there's C and D. Well, I mean, there's 2 separate teachers, so there's actually 4. I guess what I'm saying is there's 4 separate cohorts.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
for first grade.
For those
Yeah, and third grade too is the same
Right.
thing. We have 2 teachers in third grade. Then we have a blend teacher, 4 or 5 blend teacher that's going to help take some of the overcrowding off too. And hopefully it'd be nice. Well, when we go to AB, when the metrics let us go to AB, which would be the cohorts can be 15. At least right now, that's what we're hearing. So then I think that's right, Tim, right?
I think you're, no.
For when we can do the hybrid.
So hybrid, the AM, PM.
Yeah, we would do half the kids, if it's 15 or less, could come in the morning, and then the other half would come in the afternoon. So that's our goal when the state will allow us and the county numbers will allow us. And right now, we're looking at November 16th for half the kids to come in the morning and half the kids to come in the afternoon. And that'll be driven mainly by where they live because of transportation. So this kid's middle of town to south of town, or however the numbers lie, half the kids will come in the morning and the other half will come in the afternoon. I don't know if it's north or south. It all depends on where they live. And that's going to be, the piece that we have to kind of work out is where are the daycares, where does grandma and grandpa live if the kids are to be picked up there, which takes a lot of time. I know Shelley Carl spent a lot of time, a lot of extra hours trying to work on the schedule for a tentative next Monday that didn't happen, but we're able to use her work still for the following Monday.
A question. Are there, within those groups, you said that you had currently you've got certain kids with needs, educational needs coming in and are able to meet with teachers right now. Are those kids going to be there more than are they going to fall into this schedule, or are they going to be on a separate schedule?
Go ahead.
So on the day that their class is meeting, they would not have their morning special ed class, but then they would the other days. Yeah, so they would not have 2 sessions in a day.
Got it.
Yeah, and actually, I hadn't shared this with you, Mr. Wilson. We've had a couple contacts with parents that want their kids to have the specially designed instruction in the morning and not take part in the other one in the afternoon. So we'll give parents that option too.
So in reality, this is a 2-week schedule if everything lines up, because our goal, meaning the week of the 2nd and the week of the 9th. If our plan rolls out to be the 16th, then we would be in the AM, PM versus once a week or twice a week in the afternoon. So this is kind of a transition, get used to the metrics, get used to the protocols, give us a chance to work those out as well before we bring everybody back.
Right, and it's a lot of work for 2 weeks, but Mr. Wilson and I know my teachers, we see the need of not wasting another day if we can. We need to get those kids face-to-face with their teachers and also to interact with their peers. They need that, they're desperate for that, and I know I'm desperate to have kids in the building. Usually every morning, my tradition for 20-some years has been to walk the hallways and say hi to people and kind of see how things are going. And I did that Monday morning, and I think I saw one person because everybody was either streaming and had their doors closed or they were doing something. So it was really sobering to see how things have changed. That now everybody's in their own little cocoon, and I'm trying not to violate their cohort groups too by spreading anything or by having anything going on. So it's just it's a whole different world. It's not good for our kids. We need to get them in the building as soon as we can. That's it.
All right.
Thanks,
Mr. Dane. Mr. Metzger, you're up.
Well, one thing I've never had to worry about is my classroom voice. Most of the time, people just have to worry about how long I'm going to talk. So I'm going to try to keep things fairly short. Just a couple of updates. So progress reports went home last Wednesday. Some students are struggling with distance learning. We know that for a fact. The high school versus elementary school, the difference in sort of student control of the situation is one of those ones that makes distance learning a challenge. The relational piece is a big part in any time in education, but with high school students, part of what works is that they feel connected to their teacher. The impulse for high school kids oftentimes is to avoid work. I mean, let's be honest, that's just what teenagers do. But it's hard to do that when you have to go look at a teacher that you respect and you don't want to let down. So it's, hey, I left it in my locker, let me go get it, that kind of thing. What we're running into in distance learning, which I think is the same thing that schools around the state and around the country are facing, when all you have to do is push a little red button and you can forget about a person, that becomes that's challenging to build a relationship with. So we're kind of seeing that reflected in some of our grades right now. But one of the things that we're doing to try to improve that, we started some limited in-person instructions starting this week. We're not doing it by classes, but our student success team actually identified 30 students who either were struggling or we thought would benefit from being plugged into the school a little more often, even if they're not struggling. So we identified those, we split them into 3 cohorts. They're in groups of 10, 2 hours or less. We're actually doing 4 days a week. The reality and how many have come, it's about 4 per cohort, 4 to 5. But when you look at 115 kids in comprehensive distance learning right now, 4 to 5 from each cohort, 15 kids, if we can bring them up from where they are, we're doing pretty well at that point. And that's not to say that the majority aren't doing well. Actually, the majority of our high school students are actually doing quite well, and they've adapted to distance learning okay. The hybrid plan for reopening was something I was going to talk a little bit about, but as has kind of been alluded to, we're talking about an A-B schedule, or an AM-PM schedule, which sounds a little odd for high school, and it took me a little time to wrap my head around it, but we've actually found a way I think we can be successful with it, and we would be adding 40 minutes per week to each class of live instruction, so that's a big benefit for us. In addition to that, we're going to be pushing that, as Mr. Denning alluded to. We are under our instructional minutes currently, and we're going to be adding some more time anyway, but then in addition, we'd be looking at when the hybrid system comes in, we'd be looking at even more time. So a couple of project updates, just because I try to keep you in the loop about them. One of the things I wanted to thank the board on is identifying a priority for the student investment account. At one point was the maintenance on the heating system in the metal shop. Reese Electric actually came in last month and took care of that for us. We have 4 brand new heaters that will push, and the fans are working again to push the heat down into the metal shop. The kids won't be huddling around a torch to keep warm anymore. And then on top of it, we'll also be installing a new heating system into the classroom portion of that area. So that was Mr. Becker and the CTE students appreciate the board's interest in that, and then the district's expenditure of funds that we currently have for it. Continued expansion of online platforms. Students and staff are generally feeling successful with Microsoft Teams in terms of use. They're figuring out how to get on, they're engaging with classes. One of the things that continues to be a challenge, I would say, is learning how to be a student, learning how to be a teacher in Microsoft Teams. It's not that the platform itself is a problem. That I was a naysayer about Microsoft for quite some time. Teams has recently made some updates because they were being recognized as a system that schools were using that are actually very educator friendly. They made a lot of improvements in a very short time. The thing that, again, continues to be a challenge, when you're a teacher and you're looking at that kid that you know is really struggling, but they switch off the second it hits 9:15 every day, excuse me, it can make it a challenge to kind of continue to feel like you're a teacher and not somebody that's just sort of broadcasting out into the void. Education is an identity career. It's one that people are having to reform what their identity looks like right now, and I think as a result, people are struggling. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. Mrs. McGinnis is reaching out to the community to offer parent training for those interested in learning more, and we're also doing anything that we can to pull in new resources. I got in touch with Western Oregon University's math department. They're actually offering free online math tutoring through Zoom. You have certain hours. You can log in, anybody 4th grade through 12th grade. You meet with a college math major, and they'll help you through your math homework. So we're going to be putting that out pretty soon. And it's another face and it's another person. The other added benefit to that is our students actually talk to college kids at that point and say, hey, what's it like to be in college? Right now it's a lot like what they're doing, but they get the idea. CTE revitalization grant. Last year we completed a grant. We asked for about $16,500 total, I believe was the number, but that was such a long time ago that it feels like, that was forever ago. We actually got notice last week the funds are still available. They're still running as normal. So the projects that we identified last year will be going through. We identified installing a new modern foundry into the metal shop program, along with a sand muller to support that, as well as getting some equipment, some microscopes, body charts, and models for the health CTE programs. Those were both identified as student popular programs that we could improve on with some additional equipment. Oh, and for CTE, there was also an identification looking for somebody willing to do EMT1 style courses. So actually an intro to emergency medical coursework. So that was the other thing that we asked for. In terms of the goals that have been keeping you up to date since our August meeting. So social and emotional health, bringing students onto campus in limited numbers has provided a boost to both students and teachers. It's amazing to watch a group of teachers swarm around one kid on campus just because they're so happy to see somebody that makes them feel normal. You never thought you'd be happy to see teenagers. Unfortunately, we can't do that for everybody. Teachers are adjusting to teaching online. It's still less than ideal. I mean, even our most tech-savvy teachers, it's a burnout thing, man. I go home right now more tired than I do any other time in my career. And that includes staying here until 11 o'clock at night for football games, getting here at 7:45. So it's exhausting. The other thing, I've been trying to do some communication and accountability for the schools. One of the things I've been doing is on our social media and on our website, I put up a weekly principals talk, our principals chat. I try to keep it sounding less like shop talk and more like well, honestly, I'm just another guy in an office talking and trying to give you an update on what's going on, rather than looking at it from, well, here's my rehearsed speech. Like last week I talked about metrics. I talked about the stuff that had me scratching my head too, and it's the questions I've gotten from parents and families, and it's okay. It's just meant to be like, hey, we're working on it, we hear you, we know what you're asking, and we're trying to figure it out. And then last update on athletics and activities. We've had limited practices continuing, so it's every week there's a different season for sports, is getting their chance to go out, get a couple of kids together. Last week it was spring, so baseball and softball went outside, huck some balls around. And honestly, whether it turns us into a great athletics program or if it really just keeps kids connected and feeling healthy, I think that's the bigger benefit to it. The other one is a new program that we've gotten set up this year, the GBHS Smile Club. The SMILE acronym is Science, Math, because I don't remember the other ones off the top of my head, is an OSU-sponsored program for rural schools. So the rural, their goal is to put additional technology and science education into rural programs that might not otherwise have access to it. So Mr. Bigelow, our science teacher, has stepped up as our SMILE Club advisor. And so the club will be working with a partnership with the Curry Watershed Council to do some real-world science work. They've had 2 meetings so far. We've got about 6 kids that are really interested in doing some stuff. And actually, they kind of unofficially met down on the track Saturday night to do some stargazing as part of the astronomy club and class and part of the SMILE Club. So they got down, and apparently they got super nerdy about the fact that they could see the rings around Jupiter and Saturn. So yeah, something new and something different. I'm kind of happy to be able to announce that. All right. Thank you, folks.
Any questions?
Oh, yeah, you should stick around so. Are there any questions?
No, you're free to go.
Okay.
All right. 6.3 Superintendent Report. Mr. Roper.
All right, thank you. On the left page there, appreciate Tina Larino's consistency and constant revising. It's a great asset to and assistance to me to provide this accurate information. You might remember one of the around one of my goals was to go back and at least inventory, if not investigate, the possibility of people who were previously, before this summer's COVID situation, that were enrolled in homeschool and charter schools. And so those are 2 new columns on the 2 on the right. So as you see, prior to this summer, we had 42 students who are currently enrolled in other programs. So that's certainly 10%, about 10% of our current enrollment. A lot of reasons why people choose homeschool or have been enrolled in charter schools for many years, but so just wanted to share that with you. As a district, we were up 8 students from this time at our last meeting, primarily at the elementary. So our current enrollment has us at 450. Whereas we were at 442 in September. I have received confirmations from those of you who wish to attend the OSBA Fall Conference. We'll be doing those registrations for you. In the past, you recall that we've tried to make it a practice to let the board know ahead of time when we're applying for grants, especially of substantial amounts. Sometimes throughout the year we get many grant opportunities from organizations, and in this case I wanted to report to you post haste, if you will, the already awarded grants to Mr. Simonson and to Mr. Lee at the middle school. They both received many grants from Coos Curry Electric Cooperative, and so that is that. And then the other piece piece of information to share with you is this is traditionally the time of year when the state ODE announces to the public a year-at-a-glance report card, if you will, for schools and for districts. And this is on a pink, in your middle of your pink section there. You might recall from previous years, there's a lot more data than is on here. These were released last Tuesday. Normally, they have assessment data, attendance data. The principals usually fill in, add to this report with activities and goals. So this is definitely a pared down version of what traditionally comes out. Just to brief you and the public, these will be again put on our website. The first one is the district overall report, and it gives us the graduation rate up through the class of 19, that cohort of 4 years. One thing I did want to point out with that, you'll notice that in the class of 19, when they started as freshmen, 69% of them graduated on time within the school. The district, the state average is 80%. But if you go down to the next one, within another year, we had an additional up to 82% of that same cohort earned GED or earned their diploma in their 5th year. So I thought that was 82 is much more encouraging than 69, obviously. On the back, again, is really more statistical data about the makeup of our students as a district. And then you go to the second page is the high school report, very similar format. And then the last one is the Riley Creek report. So wanted to make you aware of those reports. Do you have any questions?
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. All right, old business 7.1, operational blueprint for hybrid model.
Okay, if I may, in your packet, you have an orange and a pink entitled Operational Blueprint for School Reentry. It's one for each school. They're essentially the same language except for some locations and site specific. But the blueprint that you approved in August was for us to start the school year in CDL. So in order for us to open in any other model, we have to resubmit the blueprint. This, upon your approval, will go to Public Health tomorrow for their acknowledgement and review. And then it'll be, again, forwarded to ODE. But essentially what this does, it provides the detail of all of the different aspects of reopening school, including, well, I don't explain, the public health protocols, how you deal with situations of outbreaks. You have systems of in place as far as screening students in the morning, having staff self-screen before they come to work. All the rules around physical distancing, the amount of people you can have in a room, how many people you can serve in the cafeteria, and so on. And so these two documents were written with the intent of bringing students back on an AM/PM schedule, and the major contributor to that is the classroom capacity. If you look into the weeds here, it's 36 square feet per student, per person in the room. And so throughout the summer we calculated how much each room could hold. And like for Ms. Dart, I'll use Ms. Miller's as an example. I think her room says she can have 17 people based on the furniture that's in the room. So every piece of furniture in the room counts except the student desk. So if you had tables versus desks, you have to count the tables, but you don't have to count it if it's a desk. I know it's weird. So with that, we determine how many people can be in the room. That includes the teacher, that includes an instructional assistant, and so on. And so Ms. Miller, as an example, has 25 on her class roster right now, but her room will only take 17 at a time. So that's why we have to split that 25 into a group of 12 and a group of 13, as an example. And that model follows throughout. So what would give us a change, just to take this a step farther, if the metrics change in some way or the requirements for distancing changed, and so that would impact the room capacity, and you could have 25 in a room, then that would give us the ability to be open all day to all kids on a full day schedule. So I believe it's an action item in new business to approve this revision at your pleasure. So I'm open for questions about this operational blueprint.
I was reading the protocol for, the new protocol from the state for face coverings.
Yes.
Does that apply to this, or are the schools in a separate category?
No, that has just recently come out in the last day or two, so that's not reflective of what's here. This is on page 9 in the orange. So, and very coincidentally, at about 5 o'clock tonight, my phone blew up from the superintendent message board going around about, what do they call them, Crystal?
Face shield?
No, the
Gators.
gators. How many people are allowing gators? There's never been the word gator anywhere in any guidance. So, but what has been very consistent are the face shields and chin shields are becoming less, are being banned more. So, in order to make this correct, and I will make that change based on the guidance that just came out, actually it was yesterday. I don't think it changes it very much. The original document, as an example, had bus drivers wearing face shields, and then that was a modification that's been taken out since the summer. Also in the summer before, kids in grades 6-12 are to wear masks, but not K-5. So again, that's another one of the revisions that's occurred since the summer. So I will thank you, Jeremy, for, I'll make sure that the new guidance from the executive order reflects what's under face coverings.
No questions, we'll move on to,
Do we need a motion? Do we need a motion to approve it?
We actually have it in new business as an
Yeah.
action
Okay.
item.
All right.
just a review. Okay, sorry. Student investment account revised budget. Discussion.
I'm sorry, before we get to that, I
Yes.
just saw, went back to my notes. Did the board have any questions about the metrics right now, where we are as far as,
Yeah, when's the next change?
when's the next change? Well, so every Tuesday is when the weekly account comes out. Today, the governor met with her advisory council specifically around the change in the metrics, or considering changes in the metrics. I have no idea what those are. ODE is being very tight-lipped about that until they went through this process today. They've ranged from trying to consider what California and Washington are doing, just as that as an example. Right now, overall, our number is under 10 per 100,000. In California, it's 75, and in Washington, it's 50. So it gives you And even for us to open in our plan, we're under an exception that allows 30 cases per 100,000. The incidents in Brookings the last 2 weeks have put that one, we can't even qualify for the 30. But if, so I think a combination of what the governor may release as early as Friday, and hopefully we consider the Seaview incident our blip or our spike for the county. Who knows? But those are still the ones that we're those are the metrics we still have to follow. Now I'm ready to talk about orange if you want to.
Okay, yes, let's move on.
Okay. You were all part of the process. Saw Jeremy, but Jeremy was doing his own things at that point. But anyway, this is the list of the year one activities that were part of our application last April. And you recall that our amount at that point was $432,000 and some change. Because of the impact on the state budget, specifically around the new tax, the new corporate tax, which is the primary funder of the student investment account, the ODE and the governor's office announced to us that we would have approximately 1/4, between 1/3, I think it was 37% of the original allocation. So that's the $136,454. From that, in column 1 is what our actual expense was for our new counselor. And then in the second column, these were items, this shows items on the list that we were able to fund with other funding sources. As an example, the elementary teacher, adding 1 FTE was paid for by our ESSER grant. Purchasing the Surface Go tablets was paid by Gear Up and the Southwest Oregon Children's Foundation. So this shows that even though this shows that we continued with the spirit of the SIA, but we're able to fund it in other ways. So my proposal to you tonight for you to consider is, from this list, we have about $40,000, the 136 minus the 96.5, to revise our budget. And so I made a suggestion, but it's certainly up for discussion, to use this one-time money to upgrade the security exterior doors at both schools. It's roughly the amount of the balance, but again, that's only a suggestion. The board certainly has the prerogative to make other decisions on how to use the funding.
We have to pick something from the list, correct?
Yes.
And we're on solid footing as far as devices go. We don't need any more.
We're in pretty good shape.
We're going to have a mountain of devices when this is all over.
Right. This is the beginning of, bringing us up to speed.
Okay. Let's see.
My initial reaction would be something geared towards kids right now versus something building related.
Sure.
I don't know what would be the most effective looking at that list there, or how it would.
Well, and that's the challenge, because a lot of these are
Yeah.
with the intent that you're going to be on campus,
Right.
and we don't know when.
What's the total amount?
136, 454.
Or I mean,
I'm sorry.
the total amount that,
Basically looking at the 44.
Yeah, 44,000.
okay.
be allocated?
Oh, it's about 40. I think the
Sure,
difference
40.
between 136 and 96.5 is 39,500. But the 44,000 came from a bid that I had received.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see.
So there would be some general fund maintenance money that would fulfill the rest of it.
I mean, one thing that we've talked about that we need is help getting everybody up to speed with technology. Is there a way that we can somehow get that done with these funds?
You want to clarify for that a little bit more? Are you talking about more devices or?
No, I mean, training for students and parents that support somebody that can help with that, something like that.
That wasn't in the original.
So just
Yeah.
I was gonna say, just for clarification, what's on this list was in the original grant that was
Yes.
Yeah.
approved by the
So
state.
that's-
So
Yes.
Yeah.
in order to do anything different than what's on this list, it would,
Then we would have to go through a revision process.
right.
And even if you,
The .4 FTE attendance advocate, which it looks like that's been covered through alternative means.
Yes.
Um, If one were to take money from this grant and boost that to .8, could some of that time be used for something like what Kaylee mentioned? Or not?
It's not in the original, I mean, if it's going out and serving families and helping them with school, I guess it could be a little bit of a stretch that they're having attendance issues because,
Well, if
Yeah.
the devices aren't working and attendance is actually attending school via a device, I guess is what I was thinking.
right,
I mean,
right.
that's what it is at this point.
We have large numbers, that would work.
But I know that's not gonna go on forever, but I don't know.
They got somebody in their home, I don't know.
What's that? Oh, well, yeah.
Right.
I mean, even if it's, there's ways you can help without going on the phone.
Right.
Just having somebody who's focused on that would maybe be a good thing.
well, yeah, I guess the question is, I mean, let's say we were gonna add a .5, use a .5 FTE here somewhere. I don't think 40,000 is gonna, would 40,000 cover it, and would we be able to find somebody to fill it, essentially? And are we already utilizing everybody?
Well, at this point, that is a vacant position that we haven't opened yet.
Right.
The second part I just want the board to remember is when you're considering continuing this plan, when you start investing in staff, are you considering this to be a one-time thing, or,
Right.
because our ESSA grant is just for this year.
Right.
The other thing to consider, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
The idea of
Because
you have one-time money to do things
Right.
that are important in the moment.
This SIA money that
Yes,
is considered a grant,
it is.
is it renewable?
So the idea and kind of in the planning for the next biennium is that 432,000 will come back in year 2 and in year 3.
And at some point, we will be covering that one FTE elementary teacher out of those funds.
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
So we need to be mindful of,
ongoing personnel costs versus one-time, yeah. So basically the 39,000 and change, we should really be focused on a one-time expenditure.
But I also appreciate it's not as exciting as helping kids.
Right.
You know, I understand that, I know you all understand that as
Well-
well. And if there were things on here that you've identified, that would have that impact on kids, then I say, yeah, go for it. I don't know how to advise you in this time of uncertainty of knowing when students to add in science enrichment, that was primarily through Watershed Council and so on. The after-school program is kind of an extension, for K-4 would be an extension of Ascend. So those student, if you will, things are going to be limited about, again, because we don't know how long we'll be in CDL or some other version.
Well, yeah.
Second question, if this SIA money is renewed at some point, is there the ability at that point to go back to this list and address the
Absolutely.
things
Yeah.
that are on?
Every spring, we will come up with the next year's budget. And actually, a part of this document was a year 2 and a year 3.
Okay.
So, yes.
Well, and, yeah, I'm a forward-looking person. I mean, the kids will be back in the building at
Yes,
some
they
point. And there is a reason that we put, we wanted to do security upgrades. And, now is probably the best time of any to mess with the front doors when there's not kids there. Or at least not nearly as many as there would be otherwise.
I suppose another way to look at it is if you wanted to do one school this year and another school next year and backfill that with one of the more student activity, that would be
Right.
another possibility.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not solving your problems for you, just adding
That's all right.
choices.
Yeah. I mean, I'm as comfortable with that as anything else on this list, just looking at the one-time expenses. I mean, that's something that needs to be done and has needed to be done for a long time. And, I mean, yeah, we would like, for this particular pot of money, we don't have the ability to go outside our mandate at the moment, so.
What's the possibilities of hiring an attendance advocate at this point?
Last year, we were very fortunate. When we advertised it, we had one applicant, and he met our expectations and beyond. So I would be hopeful that we would have the same opportunity. Last week, I asked our teachers to redo this is a little bit of backstory. The ESSA grant was originally given to us 2 years ago because of our low graduation rate. But it didn't mean necessarily that our extra funding had to go to address purely the graduation rate, but the whole K-12 process to why did we have the low graduation rate, whether it was, again, around counseling, around skill development, didn't attend school. So that's where the original activity of attendance advocate came from. At last Friday's in-service, I asked the teachers to take that same survey that we did 2 years ago to confirm that from their perspective where we are in meeting those goals. I would anticipate that the attendance advocate would still be high on the list of something to continue. So
I think,
as soon as that study is finished, then I would more than likely will be advertising for the attendance advocate. As we currently have it here. We could increase it if we could increase it within the ESSA grant. If we wanted to increase it to a 0.5 or 0.6, or use part of this fund as well.
I think spending this money on the security locks right now is not meeting the moment. I think we should spend it on something that we keep talking about needing right now.
Well, what do we have here?
Unfortunately,
What shape are the doors in?
We can't replace them electronically. The system is outdated. So this bid would update the system, would allow us to issue fobs and cards again. Right now, we have staff that have a key to get in a door, a key to get in an exterior door, and then a key to get in their classroom door. Eventually, we want it all to be seamless, but
Do they have a card or a fob? to get
yes,
in?
but right now, we don't have the ability to make more because, again, the software is 3 years behind.
I can get behind what Andy's saying, just for the sheer fact, when I do look down this list, there's a lot of high, there's only a couple that, everything on that list requires hiring or resituating another teacher for some type of educational purpose. And I think that's equally as difficult in the short term as well. As much as I begrudgingly, the security's definitely important down the road, well, and right now, of course. And it's a tough decision. We want to do what's best for the kids in any extra way we can right now, but there's nothing that's, to me, a clean fit to do that easily.
What's the timeline on spending?
But this has to be spent by June 30.
And as far as getting that work done, is that something that there is somebody lined up and able to do it now?
Right now, I have two bids. I need to get a third bid, but I do have companies who are ready to, for us to accept their bid.
Do we need a motion on this?
You will need a motion in
Yeah,
new business to approve a budget, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in old business, this was more of the informational part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other, is the Hive running out of money? Is that,
Is Hive running out of money?
yeah, because one of the things we have on here is extended hours on Saturdays at the library for tutoring and enrichment.
Mm-hmm.
Not only on Saturdays, but
You could probably, well, I'll let Jeremy speak to the funding of Hive.
I think that's completely unrelated.
I know
High
it's,
school.
I know it's not the Hive, but that is something that we talked about was tutoring.
Right, so the Hive plan is pretty clearly designed, that program is designed to fade away at the end of January, so at the end of the first academic term. Hive is separate from the after-school program that the library has. The after-school program will go on, assuming that there's such a thing as school to have after-school, which isn't right now. And so, I guess within Hive, between now and the end of January, the question isn't so much the budget as it is staffing. So if it were possible to have staff, let's say, available for a Saturday hour, tutoring hour, or something like that, that might be something that could be talked about. So I'm not the person to talk to about that necessarily, but that probably could be a discussion. But I think for the long term, I don't know, I don't think that the after-school program itself the grant isn't written to necessarily provide that. So hopefully that answers
The
that.
Hive grant, right?
Well, the SEND grant. The
Right.
after-school program
right.
itself, once school goes back to a normal schedule, the after-school program has some very specific parameters. One of those parameters being that it's designed for 6th through 8th. So it's not that after-school could just then pick up like what's on here, tutoring for high school kids, or after-school programming for K through 2, or something like that. So I don't know if that made any sense at all.
So the high funding is tentatively hold until end of January.
In between now and January, certainly there could be something done that addresses what's on here, but it would just end at the end of January.
Well, I also don't necessarily have a problem tabling it for a month and see if something,
I don't know if we can. So I have a timeline from the state.
well, no, then that makes it easier. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in principle, but wait.
I mean, I don't have any solution.
Yeah, there's no good way to, funnel it one place or another and still meet the grant requirements. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or discussions on that? We'll vote on it here in a minute. Okay, new business. Operational blueprint for hybrid model, revised. Yes, this is just the continuation of our discussion from old business. Does anybody have any further questions before we vote on this part?
I move to approve the revised operational blueprints for hybrid as presented.
I'll second.
I'll give that one to Jeremy.
You got it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? All right, approved. 8.2, first reading of proposed policy ACB and ACB-AR, all students belong, and bias incident complaint procedure.
So that would be in the gray and yellow ACB. So as I shared with you last month, the State Board of Education adopted a stance around bias, and actually there's a good overview in blue. Again, I don't want to, hopefully you had a chance to read it. The primary action by the State Board of Education was to identify hate symbols as something that will be prohibited at school, on school property, and so on, specifically the noose, swastika, and Confederate flag. And then with that, districts are required to adopt a policy and procedure that deals with bias incidents. So OSBA has provided us a sample policy called All Students Belong, with an accompanying yellow draft bias complaint procedure. And so with that, this is a first reading for you to give some input on how you'd like that written. The suggested language is in there in parentheses for you to consider.
Did you say the language was from the state, the draft, or?
It came from OSBA based on the State Board of Education's rule.
Okay.
I have no suggestions for, I like the way that it's written.
In the ARs, there's some choices around bracket, in the bracketed language that's pretty simple. You know, administrator, designee, superintendent or designee. And then in step 1, there's immediately, promptly, without delay. I think those all are synonymous. I would take the one that's the most prompt. So, if okay with you, I would do immediately. And then there's the process there with the administrator or designee to do the investigation and so on. Well, with that input, if there's any more, I'll bring it back to you in November for a second reading.
Very good. Move on to 8.3, the second reading of the other revised policies.
Yeah, this is around communicable diseases. One is for staff, and its parallel policy is for students. So essentially, they're the same document, but it addresses it in 2 different areas of your board policy. The essential difference in this revision is the addition of COVID-19. This does take your action tonight.
Any further questions or comment on those ones? You said we do need a motion on that?
Please.
Yeah. I move to approve the proposed policies as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Approved. Yeah, for the record, that's policy GBEB, JHCC. Okay, 8.4, student investment account revised budget. I think we hit all the points on that one. Are going to hit.
I move to approve the revision of the SIA budget for 2021 as presented.
Second.
Further questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Budget revised. Okay. 8.5, 2021 calendar revision.
So for your consideration tonight is a revision, essentially moving parent-teacher conferences from the first week of November to the first week of February. We're doing this is recommended for a couple reasons. One is trying to limit the number of visitors into a building. The hybrid protocol you just passed says no visitors in the building. And so that's one reason. We thought about trying to accommodate all through virtual conferences, but we did not want to prevent those who did not have access to devices or so on to not be able to take part in conferences via virtual. And so for those 2 primary reasons, we decided to postpone those. It's a cost neutral. There's no changes. The teacher salary, of which this calendar you see is based on, essentially moved that November 5th day to February 4th. This also does add additional day back of instruction. That November 6th, which was a full conference day, will now be a school day. And this is a way we can add time back from the 4 days that we took off the beginning of September. That makes sense? Yeah, we're regaining some more instruction time.
I move to approve the school calendar change as presented.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Approved. All right, 8.6, Division 22, assurances.
So this is the pink PowerPoint, and rather than do the PowerPoint, I just thought I'd give you a copy of the slides. You might remember Division 22 is essentially my report to the public and to you specifically to the board that we have met all of the standards in the ORSs and, in the Oregon Administrative Rules and in following state laws. This event usually happens in January, and the district responds to 54 standards that we have to say each year that we are meeting standards or we're not. So tonight's report is about the 1920 school year. And because of the impact of the disruption of the COVID pandemic, it disrupted a lot of things. ODE took that opportunity to also revise its reporting schedule. So rather than January, it's now November. And so the board has to, before November 1st, take action, or at least acknowledge that they've received my report to you. And so, as I stated a moment ago, those 54 standards have been reduced to 17 for this report to the public. They're listed on the second page of your pink handout. I'll read them quickly because I'm not going to read 54 of them. Diploma requirements, credit options, distance learning for all, special education for children with disabilities, emergent bilinguals, talented and gifted, alternative education, equal opportunities, school counseling, student safety personnel, fingerprinting of subject individuals in positions not requiring a licensure, individual student assessments and reporting, educational records and reports, complaint procedures and assurances. I'm pleased tonight to tell you that for the 1920 school year, we have met all 17. I will share that there was one I feel appropriate to share under personnel, that we did have one teacher who was in transition in a licensure, and so it took a little bit of work with TSBC, but the end result was that there's no corrective action because we did the correction action in the moment. The one thing I wanted to, so the next part of this is that I would, we have to put this on our webpage for the public to see and report it to ODE by November 1st. The one thing I did want to give you an update on, I'm sorry, before I go forward, do you have any questions about any of these categories or? Essentially, if you were to go into the list, it's acknowledging that we have graduation requirements, 4 years of English, 3 years of math, et cetera, and so forth. And again, that we have a school counseling program, that we have an assessment program, so on. So the one item I did want to remind you of is when I reported to you last January, we had one item that we were not in compliance for the 18-19 year, and that was around the adoption of instructional materials. And so I applied for and received an extension. So by June 30 of 2021, I need to report to ODE that we have completed that task. And so again, as you recall from my performance goals last month that you approved, we're doing an analysis of every grade level and every course to make sure by June we will have that list of and bring forward to you an adoption, a proposal to adopt materials on the state list. Now, we may not be able to buy all the materials that we are buying, but at least we have adopted them, gone through the process, and completed that area of compliance. there's no action required for you tonight, other than it's just the acknowledgement, and then Mrs. Hendricks would put that in the minutes that you accepted the report, and then I submit it. But again, be happy to answer any questions if you have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
Number 9, citizen input on agenda items. Limit of 2 minutes per person.
I do apologize, I'm long-winded. I'm asking that as a teacher that you take an opportunity to hear me and the concerns I have with the issues. I think that we should still have a tapered model when we bring students in, starting on November 2nd, with just starting with the kindergarten through 2nd grade. This is already going to be 40 kids where we haven't been told which bathrooms they're going to be able to use. We are unsure how sanitation processes will take place, and those kids need longer adjustment times to interact with their teachers and with each other to really get back into school. Putting in all 5 grades at once within elementary schools is going to be a mess. I do think that if we take the opportunity to have 1 extra week to bring those younger kids in, to make sure we have cleaning protocols and the expectations for pickup and drop-off cleared, then the families and the kids will benefit, as will the teachers. I also ask that we consider, again, the bandwidth, as we will have overlapping times starting next week on Monday. I'm already getting kicked out of my own calls, and I have 25 7-year-olds. So when suddenly I drop out of the call and I'm not able to re-enter it, they are still able to be there without supervision. Although my classes are recording, this is an issue regardless. So we need to consider the additional bandwidth so that as we see increasing numbers of people having to be streaming at the same time, the students don't lose instruction time and we don't lose that opportunity to make sure that our students are safe. I also think that we need to recontact those families that are having the issue of a student coming on at 10:30 when I'm still teaching until 10:30, because I do have families that contacted me when I notified them about my new schedule, saying that their child would have to log out early because they have a sibling. So making it clear, again, to our community that we have additional devices will help with this hiccup. I also think that at some point we should consider what our space in our classroom looks like. I cannot fit 17 students in my classroom. There's no way that I can do it with safe spaces. I would maybe be able to do 14, but we need to look at what it actually looks like to have our students be safely spaced within the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. Crystal, I had a question about consolidating the accounts. Could it lead to us being accepting debit cards for payments?
That's a completely separate issue.
Oh,
That's a whole
okay.
different,
Because I thought part of that issue was 2 different accounts. How do you accept a debit card when there's 2 different bank accounts? No? Okay.
oh, I see what you're saying. You're talking about, because part of the payment went to one account, right?
Right, I thought that was part of the
Eventually, yes,
obstruction.
but I don't have the high school there yet. We're starting with Riley Creek, we're starting with the smaller one, and that's going to be done this year, and that's sort of our test,
Okay.
purposefully, because the high school is much more complicated and has a lot more money and a lot more accounts than Riley Creek does. So we've done some initial testing with the system. It looks like it's working. It looks like the reports are going to give us what we need,
Mhm.
and so we're starting there. So down the road, yes,
Hopefully.
that would
Okay,
alleviate that, yes.
awesome.
Tina, will you say your name for?
Oh, sorry. Tina Lorino, Crystal River Loop. Sorry. I had a question about the orange sheet and the SIA account and door system. What, are you just considering the doors that right now have those inadequate key?
No,
Or all?
the bid that's included here specifically would be the front doors at Riley Creek,
Mhm.
the doors by Tom's office, the doors down by the gym.
Mhm.
Those would be all electronically fobbed. And then here at the high school, the ones that are currently, so the one back here, the front door, and the side over here.
Okay, so not just the key swipe doors at Riley Creek. Like right now, we have only 2 doors that are those
So
old,
we'd be-
outdated,
We would be
unusable.
adding the front door. The front office doors,
the front office doors and the gym doors.
yes.
The door that connects to the field, if you yank it hard enough, it just opens too.
That was my next point.
Yeah.
Is Scott's statement of, he thinks that looking at that orange sheet and the expenditure of the SIA grant money should, especially right now, be going directly towards the kids. And you can yank on half of those doors and get them open, if you yank hard enough. And I think a lot of people, more people than should, know that in this community. There's also numerous keys that are out there that haven't been returned for years, are just gone. We don't know where they are, have never been returned. And the majority of our doors still use those same exact keys. So, like Mr. Wilson said, with not having kids in the building would be an optimum time to do something like that. And that, to me, goes right towards those kids. I see the restraining orders, I see the custody papers. I'm terrified all the time of people coming into our building. What you mentioned about the attendance advocate and technology, your discussion between you two, looking at our attendance reports, and I printed one for our online students for Mr. Dane today. The majority of our attendance issues right now are kids that cannot get online, that have no internet. You see kids that are gone for 6, 7, 8 days at a time because we don't have internet, because we can't get to the library parking lot to use the internet. It's our biggest attendance issue right now. It ties directly into technology. Hopefully that remains that way and we don't start losing kids when we bring them in the building just because of attendance issues in and of itself. Right now it's technology. And what do I do but excuse those absences? It's not their fault that they have no internet from their home and that they don't have a car to drive to Nasika Water District or wherever that spot is, that they can't attend school for days. So I see where that ties in. I don't know if that can tie in money with an attendance advocate or not. I know I'm getting to my 2 minutes, but I also wanted to, in talking about the attendance advocate, our new full-time counselor at Riley Creek is amazing. He is reaching out on his own without asking for reports or anything. He goes in, he looks, he pulls the attendance, he calls those people. He's gone to numerous houses of kids that have been missing. Kids that don't have internet, he's bringing them in. When Tom was talking about him having kids in his office, they don't have internet, he calls, he'll go get them, or he'll have them brought in, and they'll sit in his room to do their live classes, so that they're not missing classes for no fault of their own. So, again, ties into attendance and technology. Hopefully, that money can be brought together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to board member reports. Start on Jeremy's side tonight.
Actually, is it okay for me to ask a question?
Yes.
In response to Darby's question about bandwidth, I'm wondering if Superintendent Wilson could give us any kind of a progress report on
Sure.
where that is at?
So during our technology meeting 2 weeks ago, we received some preliminary information from Spectrum on what it would cost to go from our current, which was 200, up to 500. So essentially double the speed we have right now. And Crystal and I, again, we're speaking about that this afternoon to confirm the question we need to determine is we acknowledge that we need that, and even when we return from CDL, we're going to need the increased bandwidth. It's about $550 per month more than we're paying now, which is essentially a 100% increase to what we pay now. And so we're looking, so that's about $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 that we wasn't budgeted particularly for that. Another factor, so we need to find a place to do that, because I agree that it's a priority. The other question that's outstanding before we can make that decision is currently our E-rate money is being used as a discounted rate from Spectrum. We need to confirm with Spectrum that they will or will not honor our additional request under the rules of E-rate, or we have to pay the full price. So that's really where we are in the process.
Thank you. The only other things that I wanted to say were that since the last regular monthly board meeting, I have heard and seen a lot of comments from parents about just how frustrated they are not having their children in school in person. And as a school board member, I guess there aren't many of those people. There aren't any of those people here right now. But if they happen to watch this, I want them to know that as a school board member, I hear that and definitely sympathize with that and would like it to be different right now. And so I appreciate the school and the administrators doing what they can to get us to that point within all of the difficult parameters we're working under. So I think that's my only comment.
Thank you. Mr. McNair?
I do not have anything.
Ms. Vice Chair?
I just want to emphasize that I think that the most important thing is to get the littlest kids back in school first. I think that I want everyone back in, obviously, but I think that we should do everything we can to make sure that that happens, because that's really important.
Thank you. Nancy?
I want to thank the citizens that came, the teacher and Tina, for your input. It is always helpful to have knowledge that you bring to us, so I appreciate that. And also to the other staff that were here tonight. And hopefully we'll get the kids in school soon. I mean, that's the goal.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really don't have much else to add other than, I feel like I've been a broken record for the last 6 months. I try and be as forward-looking as possible, knowing we're doing everything we need to do to get the kids back in the building safely. Yeah, I have nothing else to add. Upcoming dates: OSBA Annual Convention, November 14th, 2020, in the virtual format. Thank you. Everybody that wanted to be registered is registered. And the next board meeting will be November 18th, 2020 at 6 p.m. at the Ruby Chat School. That's everything. I will adjourn this meeting at 7:39.